Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture of literature. I'm Adrian Fortin, and we are here for a poetry discussion that comes to us from the Penguin Book of First World War Poetry. It comes to us from the poet known as Jessie Pope. The poem in question is Socks, and it reads as such. Shining pins that dart and click in the fireside sheltered peace, check the thoughts that cluster thick, 20 plain and then decrease. He was brave. Well, so was I. Keen and merry, but his lip quivered when he said goodbye. Pearl the seam stitch, pearl and slip. Never used to living rough. Lots of things he'd got to learn. Wonder if he's warm enough. Knit two, catch two, knit one, turn. Hark, the paper boys again. Wish that shout could be suppressed. Keeps one always on the strain. Knit off 9 and slip the rest. Wonder if he's fighting now. What he's done and where he's been. He'll come out on top somehow. Slip 1, knit 2, purl 14. I think it is fair to read this poem and question just how much irony we're allowed. It is fair to read this poem and question how much we're able or prompted to read in to intent of the poet themselves. Is he fighting now? Is he coming out on top? With the general tenor of World War I poetry, or at least the World War I poetry which has largely survived the test of time, we are prompted to figure not. We are prompted into believing for whomever these socks are being made, they will not get there in time. One of the other things that is interesting to me about this, there are at least 3 poems that are known as the World War I poetry that I've seen that mention socks. One is from the Big Four. I can't remember which poem it is. It's either from Owen or Sassoon or Siegfried Wilfred Sassoon, or Siegfried Sassoon, Wilfred Owen. Who are the other 2? The 4 big ones. There's 4 big ones you always read about. I'm blanking right now, but there's at least 3 poems I've read about that have at least some focus on socks, and it's strange the way poetry is able to distill something as large as a world conflict and put it on the minor stage that is a soldier's foot. But it is that soldier's foot that we, the reader, may struggle with which we, the reader, may struggle. That is something that, regardless of whether or not we have been in the army or seen battle or anything according to that regard, whether or not we have been there, we can identify with what it means to have soggy socks. And we're able to further extrapolate what something like soggy socks would do to you in conditions that war may necessitate. Along those lines, we are able to empathize with whatever the focus of the poem might be. Able to empathize in a way that we would not be able to if the words being thrown around were England and France and Germany. We would not be able to empathize with those 3 big players. But when you start talking about socks, and knitting socks at that, here we're knitting socks. Oh, German mother by the fire. Knitting socks for your son or something. Wow, how's that poem go? It's one of the big ones. I'm out of it today. I apologize. But that is what we can identify with. That little micro detail, that little detail that is personal and personable. Here, we are not thrust into battle. We're on the sidelines, but at work nonetheless. He was brave, well, so was I. Keen and merry, but his lip quivered when he said goodbye. To me, this sounds like a mother sending her son off to war. He was brave, but so was I sending my son off to war. Why was she brave? Because she had to watch her son's lip quiver when he said goodbye. And here she is doing her work in the war effort regardless. The main reason I want to do a poetry discussion about this poem is that little detail of the socks. That small detail that brings us onto a person, brings us into an action versus throwing us onto the battlefield. And it is strange what a guttural response that can force. That's all I have for this poetry discussion. I hope to see you back tomorrow for another video. And don't forget, if you like this sort of thing, there's an entire playlist of poetry discussions here on the channel. There's also a playlist of poetry reviews. So hitting that like button really helps me out here on the channel. And subscribe if you have not already.